In just 4 minutes and 31 seconds, one Vatican audit destroyed the most powerful woman in Europe. I've covered 89 international summits. I've witnessed diplomatic breakdowns, alliance collapses, and political assassinations. But what happened at 10:42 a.m. on June 15th in the G7 Borgo Egnazia conference room wasn't just diplomatic confrontation, it was systematic obliteration of Giorgia Meloni by a woman who had built an unbreakable case of the largest religious money laundering scandal in modern European history. Kemi Badenoch walked into the Italian summit carrying a reinforced diplomatic case sealed with UK financial intelligence and Vatican Bank Authority stamps. She looked like an international prosecutor who had assembled evidence to destroy a criminal network built on exploiting sacred trust. What none of us knew was that case contained audit documents exposing $3.7 billion in Vatican Bank diversions to shell companies controlled by Meloni's political network. But she didn't open it immediately. The silence before evisceration was suffocating. The conference room went deadly quiet, not respectful G7 courtesy, but absolute silence when everyone senses a prime minister's reputation destruction. At 10:41 a.m., Meloni's chief of staff received an urgent, encrypted message. His face transformed from confident to horrified as he whispered something panicked in Italian. Meloni's populist composure cracked. Her Vatican liaison was frantically checking emergency communications. She looked like someone who knew 3 years of Catholic conservative credibility was about to be exposed as G7's biggest religious fraud. And then Badenoch unlocked her diplomatic case. Prime Minister Meloni, she began, her voice carrying prosecutorial authority. I want to discuss Vatican-Italy financial cooperation and concerning irregularities brought to my attention through UK Vatican Banking Intelligence Coordination. Standard opening. Nothing threatening. Meloni looked relieved, confident. Her media team were preparing responses about Protestant attacks on Catholic financial sovereignty. But Badenoch's case was positioned precisely, open to a tab marked with Vatican Bank Authority seals. This wasn't routine discussion. This was systematic prosecution. Prime Minister Badenoch, Meloni replied in her accented English, Italy maintains sacred commitment to Vatican financial transparency that reflects our Catholic values and religious institutional cooperation. Perfect diplomatic deflection. But Badenoch wasn't interested in religious philosophy. She was building towards something devastating, like an investigator with documents to destroy fraudulent claims. Prime Minister Meloni, she said, removing a document, are you familiar with the Sacred Heritage Facilitation Office, established in Vatican City on October 12th? The question hit the G7 summit like religious dynamite. Meloni's expression didn't change, but I watched her hands. They went rigid. When Catholic leaders' hands stop moving during Vatican discussions, their survival instincts have activated. Prime Minister Badenoch, Meloni replied, maintaining composure but lacking confidence. Italy works with numerous Vatican coordination bodies as part of our comprehensive approach to Catholic financial cooperation. Wrong answer. Catastrophic. When asked about a specific Vatican office with a specific date, generic answers suggest massive cover-up. Badenoch pulled out a second document with Vatican Bank investigation stamps and UK financial intelligence markings. Prime Minister Meloni, she continued, gaining momentum. According to these banking audit documents, the Sacred Heritage Facilitation Office has processed $3.7 billion in Vatican institutional funds since 20. A shockwave rippled through G7 observers. $3.7 billion represented nearly half of Vatican Bank's total institutional holdings. But Badenoch was just beginning her systematic evisceration. Prime Minister, she said, producing a third document, these files show that only $890 million of those funds ever reached their intended Catholic charitable recipients. The conference room fell silent. Not diplomatic courtesy. This was G7 leaders processing information that could destroy careers and trigger international religious investigations. Meloni's Vatican advisor leaned forward. His theological training inadequate for criminal allegations. Her media handler stopped checking communications, staring at Badenoch with disaster shock. But what happened next changed everything. Meloni shot forward, her Catholic conservative composure evaporating. Prime Minister Badenoch, these allegations represent serious mischaracterization of legitimate Vatican institutional coordination processes. Prime Minister Badenoch interrupted, cutting through the protest. Are you denying that you personally signed authorization documents for $2.84 billion in Vatican funds that have disappeared from official banking audit trails? Silence. Absolute silence. For 19 seconds, I counted. Meloni said nothing. 19 seconds in high-stakes G7 proceedings equals admission of religious guilt. When she finally spoke, her voice had changed. The confident Catholic leader was gone, replaced by panic with an Italian accent. I signed numerous authorization documents as part of Italy's Vatican coordination responsibilities. I cannot recall every specific funding arrangement referenced in these allegations. Devastating response. When a Catholic prime minister says, I cannot recall about $2.84 billion in missing Vatican funds while claiming to champion religious values, it sounds like systematic religious fraud. Badenoch opened her case one final time and removed the smoking gun that ended Meloni's Catholic political leadership. Prime Minister, she said, her voice now carrying absolute authority, perhaps this will help refresh your Vatican memory. She placed a surveillance photograph on the conference table. The image showed Meloni at an exclusive Monaco yacht, celebrating with expensive champagne, while Vatican Bank officials were visible in the background. This photograph was taken by UK financial intelligence at Monaco Harbour on September 29, 2023, the feast of St. Michael the Archangel, the same weekend that $1.4 billion in Vatican charitable funds were transferred to accounts that international auditors cannot trace. The timing was devastating. Catholic Holy Day, same weekend, same luxury location. This wasn't Vatican cooperation. This was documented enrichment by someone who claimed to champion Catholic values while secretly stealing church funds meant for the poor. Meloni's face drained of color. Her hands were visibly shaking, not diplomatic nervousness, actual trembling visible to every world leader. In the Italian delegation section, her Vatican team was typing frantically, sending emergency damage control instructions to every Italian embassy and Vatican office. But Badenoch wasn't finished eviscerating Italy's Catholic prime minister. Prime Minister, she continued, producing another document with Italian financial police seals. I also have internal Italian government communications showing you personally overruled Vatican banking audit recommendations that flagged the Sacred Heritage Facilitation Office as a potential criminal fraud operation. At 10:47 a.m., 5 minutes after she'd begun speaking, Giorgia Meloni experienced complete Catholic political breakdown. Her voice was barely audible through translation systems. Prime Minister Badenoch, these documents lack proper religious context. Vatican cooperation requires complex institutional coordination arrangements. She stopped mid-sentence. 23 seconds of silence. I have never seen a G7 leader unable to complete a sentence during summit proceedings. The silence was broken by Badenoch's calm response. Prime Minister, I'm not questioning complex arrangements. I'm questioning $2.84 billion in Vatican funds that disappeared while Catholic charities struggled to help the fool's poorest people. The accusation hung in the room like religious poison. This wasn't just about Vatican policy. This was about systematic betrayal of Catholic responsibility by the leader who claimed to champion Christian values while secretly enriching her network. Meloni's Vatican advisor was whispering urgently in Italian, but even he seemed to recognize that standard Catholic damage control was inadequate for religious criminal allegations of this magnitude. Furthermore, Badenoch continued, opening her final folder, Vatican Banking Authority analysis confirms that these missing Catholic institutional funds were systematically diverted to accounts controlled by luxury yacht networks throughout Monaco, the French Riviera, and Italian coastal resorts. The expansion from individual corruption to systematic luxury diversion demonstrated that this wasn't isolated fraud. This was criminal enterprise designed to enrich Italian Catholic officials through Vatican funds. At 10:48 a.m., Meloni made the decision that ended her Catholic international credibility. We will need to review these allegations with our legal teams and provide appropriate responses through established Vatican Italian institutional procedures. Wrong answer. Religiously fatal. When accused of systematically stealing $2.84 billion in Vatican charitable funds, you don't promise to review allegations, you categorically deny or admit guilt. The G7 conference room erupted in chaos. German Chancellor Scholz demanded clarification. French President Macron's advisor was calling Paris. Canadian Prime Minister Trudeau's delegation was discussing emergency Vatican sessions. In the press gallery, correspondents were typing frantically. The Financial Times Vatican correspondent spoke urgently. This could end Meloni's Catholic conservative leadership. We're watching Italian religious credibility collapse in real time. As the G7 session concluded, I overheard conversations confirming what every world leader was thinking. È finita, c'est fini. She's finished. The $3.7 billion Vatican money laundering wasn't just about religious coordination. It was about a Catholic champion who had systematically betrayed Vatican trust by stealing church funds while claiming to defend Christian values. By 12:30 p.m. Italian time, Meloni scandal was trending globally. By 1:15 p.m., the Vatican Bank confirmed immediate investigation. By 2:11 p.m., 8 Catholic bishops demanded emergency Vatican meetings. Every major network ran wall-to-wall Vatican Gate coverage, exposing Italy's prime minister as a church fund-stealing hypocrite who betrayed Catholic responsibility for personal luxury. And it all started with one diplomatic case, carried by a woman who had built an unbreakable case against Europe's most powerful Catholic leader. What I witnessed wasn't just G7 diplomacy. It was the moment when banking evidence obliterated religious authenticity, when documented fraud defeated Catholic theater, and when forensic preparation destroyed a leader's entire Christian political identity. The G7 summit continued 2 more days. But everyone knew the outcome. Meloni's credibility as Catholic champion was finished. Her authority as Vatican partner was destroyed. Sometimes religious justice takes years through Vatican investigations. Sometimes it takes 5 minutes in an Italian conference room. On June 15th, I watched Kemi Badenoch prove that in international relations, documented evidence always defeats religious performance. If this exposure of religious betrayal restored your faith in international accountability, don't just watch, like, share, and subscribe to our channel where Vatican scandals get exposed and religious lies get prosecuted, no matter which Catholic accent they hide behind. Hit the bell. The next church fraud might involve your nation's religious institutions. What would you do if you discovered your Catholic leader had been stealing Vatican charitable funds meant for the poor? Drop a comment below. This analysis is based on G7 summit proceedings and Vatican banking audit documentation. All dialogue and specific details are dramatized for educational and commentary purposes.